Welcome to Moment of Clarity. So I wanted to try something new today. I'm going to do the share screen and comment on a video about Brian Stelter, the CNN hack. He's funnier in a way than a lot of them because he supposedly has a show about media called Reliable Sources, where he criticizes other outlets, although mainly Fox News. He's mainly just going after Fox News. He criticizes other outlets about how terrible they are while just completely missing how fucking horrific CNN is, but really how horrific most of them are. You know, he'll avoid like NPR or any of the ones that are putting forward the neoliberal agenda. Those are all cool with him. He just has a problem with Fox News. That's it. That's his reliable media. And he touts himself as some sort of unbiased observer. It's so fucking hilarious on so many levels. There's Whoopi Goldberg for you. Goldberg looking, I feel like more bloated than usual. But Brian Stelter makes her look less bloated. So he's going to come on and de-bloat her.
His New York Times best-selling book, Hoax, You Know Who, Fox News and the Dangerous Distortion of the Truth. Please welcome Brian Stelter.
So let's talk about these two clowns. Now, for some odd reason, Brian Stelter has the most bizarre, sinister, fucking creepy smile that's ever existed. Like he's just constantly. I think both his face, his facial issues, and his points of view, his politics, his criticism of media, they both are the result of the neck collar on the shirt getting tighter and tighter as he gets bigger and bigger. So it's slowly cutting off oxygen, which is forcing a kind of weird smile and also causing him to relay these points on the media that are fucking hilarious. So he wrote a book. What Whoopi Goldberg just said, he wrote a book called Hoax about Fox News. Now, here's the thing. If this were someone I respected that just was like, oh, this book specifically is about Fox News, then I would totally agree. Yes, Fox News lies to you all the time. Absolutely. But when it's someone on CNN, one of the biggest, most warmongering, most horrific pro-war, pro-U.S. empire, colonialism, unfettered consumerism, fucking neoliberal, half the time neocon, fucking awful shit show. When he's on that platform, you can't write a book called Hoax about Fox News. I'm sorry. Those are the rules, asshole. So let's see a little more what Brian Stelter has to say.
Brian, thanks for
coming.
Good
morning. Thank you.
So he did this town hall on ABC last night. I just wanted to ask you, what do you think he was doing? Why do you think he did it?
He went outside the Fox News bubble, and I'm glad he did. It was incredible to hear these voters. I spoke with 3 of the voters afterwards. They were all mad because they feel like Trump didn't answer their questions, but at least they had a chance to try.
They were all mad that at least they got a chance to try. These are the voters that CNN has completely ignored by ignoring the exploitation that we see on a daily basis, by ignoring how our system is set up to fuck you over, how our system is set up to enrich billionaires fucking endlessly while, extracting it from the average worker. That is all ignored on CNN for the most part, with an occasional mention here or there. And so he's like, I love it. I love to see these voters. Finally, Trump's talking to the voters. These people that Brian Stelter cares about while he's on this clown show of a network, CNN. Also, he acts like he cares about voters like they're average people. He should care about them. Well, what about the average people that we're killing with our economic sanctions in various countries? The average people we're bombing with our goddamn bombs in countries where if you were to ask the average American why we're there, they wouldn't fucking know. Why? Hey, you on the street? Why are we in Syria? Because the thing, and that's not saying Americans are dumb. I'm saying that there's no fucking actual reason given. In fact, on an upcoming Redacted tonight, I'm going to go through all of the insane reasons that we say we're in Syria, and none of them fucking add up. So, that's thank God, Brian Stelter cares about the people there that Trump is talking to.
is once in a while trying to appeal outside the Fox base. But look, Whoopi, at the end of the day, this is about the Foxification of America. He believes he needs Fox to win, and that's why he started the day by calling into Fox and Friends.
So,
Joy.
Brian, it's, Brian.
That was the part where Joy Behar forgot that what his name was or why she's there. Really, she's like, "What, Brian? Who'd you? Hey, hey." And then Brian Stelter puts on that bizarre "I've just like murdered someone and eaten their liver" kind of face. Like, I mean, it really is that not. If anyone who saw the movie Joker, where Joaquin Phoenix plays the Joker going slowly into, complete mental loss, complete dark side, is Brian Stelter, that smile, I mean, is that not, that's Joaquin Phoenix, but like at the end of the movie, that's the last 5 minutes, just full on cray-cray. That's Brian Stelter for you. But, all right, let's keep going.
So Fox News and Trump, they love to criticize stories that have like anonymous sources, even though it's exactly what brought down Richard Nixon. But you say, I like this part of your book, you say that Trump is Hannity's #1 anonymous source. So what's the biggest danger this country faces from that? I mean, is he slipping him the information and
I feel like
not reporting it?
Yeah, I had to write this book because these guys are hypocrites. Sean Hannity is a hypocrite. He's blasting anonymous sources and saying journalism is dead when he uses an anonymous source in the form of President Trump,
So here he is going after Hannity for blasting anonymous sources. And then look, absolutely right. Yes, Hannity, absolutely hypocrite, fucking clown, fucking corporate clown. Hannity is, no doubt. But so is Brian Stelter. And Brian Stelter is getting on Hannity for criticizing anonymous sources while using them. Yet these anonymous sources, many of them CNN has used, have proven to be fucking fake news frauds again and again and again. The latest one that has just collapsed into a shit heap has been the anonymous sourcing of the Russian bounty story, right? That thing that was 2 days of nonstop MSNBC and CNN coverage. Russia paid the Taliban to shoot at American troops, as if the Taliban need a reason to shoot at the American troops. From the Taliban's viewpoint, America's invading their country. They've always hated the American troops. They've been shooting at them since day one. I don't think they needed someone to be like, here's $5. Oh, okay, now we'll go attack America. And so CNN uses these anonymous sources. They say intelligence community. They fawn over the intelligence community and the State Department, and they act like everything they say is holier than thou. Everything they say could never be questioned. When Mike Pompeo said to your faces, I'm sure many of you have seen the clip, we lie, we cheat, we steal. That's what we were taught in the CIA. That's what Mike Pompeo said to a live audience. You can watch him laugh about it.
I was the CIA director. We lied, we cheated, we stole. It was like we had entire training courses.
Live on video. And Joy Behar goes, these anonymous sources, that's what brought down Richard Nixon. You notice she had to go back to Nixon to justify the anonymous sourcing that is turned into this incredible fucking clown car of insanity, where you have the State Department not the State Department, the intelligence community just constantly putting out whatever lie they need that week to further American propaganda. And the Russian bounty story is just the latest one that's collapsed. I mean, we see this again and again, right? We saw it with weapons of mass destruction in Iraq. We see it with most of the, the FBI. It's come out that over 95% of the terrorists they capture or suspected terrorists they capture, they're involved in actually turning those people into terrorists. They are FBI collaborators. They're it's a form of entrapment. They basically find, people with a lot of mental difficulty, a lot of mental problems, mental illness, and they talk them into planning a terrorist attack, and then they arrest them for doing the planning with the FBI. That's like 90-some% of FBI arrests. And so these are the people we're supposed to trust when they're anonymously sourcing these insane claims, like the Russian bounty story, like the entire Russiagate conspiracy theory that has collapsed I mean, we've watched it collapse over and over. Mueller recently dropped all the indictments that he was able, just about all of them, the indictments on the Russian troll farm that he was able to get. They dropped them. They're not going after them because they couldn't prove them in court. They couldn't prove that the Russian clickbait farm had any connection to the Russian government. And you can look these things up. You don't have to trust me. Fucking go look up whether Mueller dropped the indictments on the clickbait farm in Russia. And they did that quietly on a Friday because they didn't want you to notice that they had nothing on this. It's just, I mean, most of you know this, that the Russiagate thing has turned into this wacky conspiracy theory. Basically, all they were ever able to prove was that there were some ads on Facebook that a few people saw. Most of the ads, fewer than 3 people saw. And the ads were nonsense. They were photos of Bernie Sanders in a banana hammock. I'm not kidding. So to think that's what really swayed people, that's what got the voters in line. Damn it, by God, I'm gonna fucking go get in line and vote because I will not stand for this drawing of Bernie Sanders in a G-string. All right, I do not want to see the colorful crayon drawing outline of Bernie's schlong, and therefore I'm going to vote for Trump. How many people do you really think said that? How many people do you really think that won over? So, again, the point is not that Fox News is legit. They're not. They lie constantly. The point is that you have this CNN clown, Brian Stelter, being like, Fox News is a hypocrite, and they are making things up as they go. Meanwhile, look at what. All right, let me play another clip before it's hard to take more than one sentence without fucking losing my mind on this shit. And that's a good face. I like that face from Brian Stelter. I think he nailed it on that one. That's him realizing that his soul is vapid and empty, and that he's absolutely meaningless, overpaid clown.
The greatest hoax of all of the Trump years is that Donald Trump has convinced 1/3 of the country not to believe anything but Sean Hannity and Fox and Trump. That is the greatest hoax of all. And frankly, it's just sad, I think, Joy.
Well, Brian, you interviewed over 200 and yeah, it is. Brian, you interviewed over 250 current and former Fox News staff.
Okay, I love I couldn't tell who threw it in there, but I love it's dangerous is what it is. It's dangerous. It's dangerous that Trump has talked a certain portion of America into believing Fox News. I agree with that. If you then say it's also dangerous for them to believe your network, CNN or MSNBC or any of these networks pushing endless war. I mean, we're bombing nonstop. Every 12 minutes was the last time the Pentagon actually released the numbers of bombs that they've been dropping. Every 12 minutes, a bomb falls from this country. And Brian Stelter talks about none of it. Never fucking mentions it. But he has the nerve to write a whole goddamn book. I mean, I'm sure it's a pop-up. I can't imagine it involves multi-syllabic words. But write a whole goddamn book about how Fox News is a hoax. Yes, Fox News is the problem. If you would just listen to us at CNN and support all of our wars and all of our economic sanctions that kill people day in and day out, if you would just listen to us, then all would be fine in the United States of America, where wages have been stagnant for the last 20 years, where if the income distribution and buying power had kept up with the 1968 minimum wage, then everybody would be making a minimum wage of over $20 an hour. But we won't mention that here on CNN. And if you would just turn off Fox News, then everything be going fine in this here country, despite the fact that we never mentioned climate change. Now CNN will do a report. We'll do a report, once a week about climate change. But I think they're waiting until it's a little too late to actually reveal or talk about the fact that people can't fucking breathe in California right now. But Brian Stelter on The View with, more corporate clowns, the cast of The View, because The View's job is to pump up these meaningless shills when they have political people on. You know, there's a certain the View is actually a perfect example, because the View is supposed to be argument, right, between these women about what's going on in our country. But their argument, again, is in this allowable box of acceptable discussion, right? They can't say the word capitalism. They can't actually question our economic system. They can question whether Trump made a mistake by withdrawing the few hundred troops from here or there, or they can talk about whether Trump made a mistake by bombing assassinating General Soleimani, Iran's head general, in an act of war that could have dragged us into one of the most massive world wars we've been in a long time. They can argue about whether that was a mistake. They can't argue about why we're at war at all. They can't actually get to the heart of the matter. So as long as they convince you that there's a lot of debate right within these parameters, then they've already won. And I don't mean the women of the View have already won. I mean the ruling elite have already won. This is the allowable debate on the View and on almost all of your networks. Well, let's keep going.
And we're shocked at how many of them miss Roger Ailes, despite the toxic work environment and sexual harassment. Why do you think that is?
Yeah, because they said they missed having a really strong leader. Yes, he was a disturbing boss. He was a sexual predator. Ailes abused his staff and abused the company. But everybody knew who they were working for. They knew what the boss wanted. And when Ailes was thankfully forced out, there was this power vacuum. And you know what happened? Trump filled the vacuum.
Okay, so he actually, maybe that's the most interesting thing he says. I mean, most of it's just nonstop corporate shilling crap. But the thing about the power vacuum is interesting, because it is true that a lot of people in our country, in our society, look to kind of daddy or mommy to fill this power vacuum void. Now, unfortunately, a lot of the time, his network, CNN or MSNBC, or sometimes the government, they act as the daddy or mommy. And I know mommy state is a term that the Republicans like to use to cut all social safety net, or nanny state, or whatever the fuck. But that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the idea that people want to believe that someone's got this shit figured out. Someone is not going to let large swaths of the country burn for climate change. Someone is not going to allow 100 million evictions across the country. They've got it covered. We want to believe that there's a daddy or mommy figure that's really handling things. And that's why people have this immense faith in Congress, in the presidency. And he's talking about Roger Ailes, the head of Fox News. The people had a faith in him, apparently. But it's incredibly sad that people think that someone has this figured out, because they don't. There's no one in charge. These are children and hacks in charge. These are sociopaths who have gotten to the top of this pyramid scheme, because it rewards sociopathy. Those who are sociopaths tend to get to they charted out a path for our future. It's the sociopath. Okay. And so Brian Stelter saying these people at Fox News look to Trump like they look to Roger Ailes. But he also said they miss Roger Ailes, a serial sexual harasser, sexual predator who exploited, all kinds of people. But that is corporate America, right? Corporate America is exploitation. So he says, it's odd. People at Fox News miss Roger Ailes, even though I talked to so many who were sexually harassed by him, or sexually, or otherwise bullied by him, and it's like, well, these are everybody at Fox News for the most part. I don't know everyone there, but I don't know most people there. But I'm going to say that if you're at Fox News, then probably 80-90% are corporate hacks. Who, mostly right wing, but it doesn't have to be, but corporate hacks who just want to get paid to be there, and they don't really care about what's going on in the world. They don't really care what's said on any of these shows for the most part. And so the fact that they would miss a corporate titan who was a harasser and bully and sexual predator, it's not really a surprise. It's not really anything that should be that shocking. But to them, it's shocking because they view Roger Ailes as the anomaly, right? He's the, oh my God, there was a sexual predator in corporate America. Now, That doesn't by me saying people shouldn't be shocked. It doesn't mean he shouldn't have been fired and put in prison if he's fucking actually sexually attacked someone. But I'm just saying that the shock is like them acting like this doesn't go on in all of these networks. All of Hollywood, there's tons of this shit. But let's see a little more.
Brian, we know each other, and I echo what you just said. I mean, I used to work under Roger Ailes, and he was a maniacal tyrant, but he was also a genius, and there's something incredible about working for a genius. So
genius.
I guess I'm one of those cliches.
Thanks, Megan
yes,
McCain.
like a mad genius. So you work for CNN, obviously. You have a big show on Sunday. There are some ethical questions that are being thrown around about CNN lately. There's a 2016 audio of your president, Jeff Zucker, offering debate advice to President Trump that was released. Jake Tapper was recently caught trying to allegedly influence a congressional election. And I had serious problems with the way Chris Cuomo had a reoccurring primetime sort of comic routine with his brother instead of asking about policies that were literally sending my friend Janice Dean's older relatives to die in nursing homes. So with the criticism of CNN, do you believe that this is acceptable? And don't you think there's enough fair criticism to go all the way around right now in just how news networks are run?
Well, first, I think you should write a book. I think you listed off all of these storylines. A lot of them, though, are cherry-picked, coming from these audio tapes Tucker Carlson's been airing. And I do have a question about this. It relates to my book. Michael Cohen says these audio tapes were only held by Trump.
Hold on 1 second. I love the idea. These are cherry-picked, meaning the example. Now, Meghan McCain, she's an awful she's the worst. She's a horrible, not bright, asshole who supports all of her father's policies of bombing everywhere, killing every innocent civilian you can get your hands on, as long as they're, in one of the shithole countries, as Donald Trump would say. But she has a point here, which is CNN's corrupt as well. Here are some examples. And then Stelter, in order to defend his parent company there, he goes, well, you cherry pick stuff. You cherry-picked corruption? You cherry-picked, that's how corruption works. It's not every corrupt entity is corrupt 100% of the time. But if you can say they're corrupt here and there and there and there might be a theme here, Brian. Saying that you cherry-pick them means nothing. And furthermore, Fox News is horrible at moments, and at other moments, they're less bad. So you're saying if I point out a moment that Fox News was horrible, and then you say, that you cherry pick that. Yeah, that's what proving something is about these networks. You point to the times where they've been fucking horrific. And if you find a lot of them, then guess what? That's not an accident. That's not an anomaly. It's not a mistake, okay? It is how these networks work. It's how this media garbage works. So the idea that he says it's a fucking cherry picking is so maddening. But hold on, let's see more of his defense of CNN.
The Trump Organization and the DOJ. So all of a sudden they're airing on Fox News. You have to wonder if it's another example of this feedback loop that exists between Trump and Fox. But look, I'm not a spokesperson for Fox, for CNN or Fox. I'm not a spokesperson for CNN. It's not for me to comment on these tapes. Here's what I do think is sad, though. I think it's sad that private conversations get leaked out, get distorted, and then, they become polarized and weaponized. That's the environment we're in, and that's sad. If our text messages or if my phone calls with friends were suddenly taken out of context and distorted, I feel like that's just, let me put it this way. I think the Trump age has ruined a lot of friendships.
That's possibly the dumbest, fucking most awful, most pathetic defense of CNN and when they've been caught in corruption that could ever be spit out of his stupid face. I mean, honestly, she is a fucking corporate shill, but she gave concrete examples of CNN doing terrible things. I guess Jeff Zucker is the head of CNN is what she said or whatever, but and he gave, I haven't heard the tape, so I don't know what she's talking about, but if they're playing the tapes, I'll assume she didn't make it up. Also, if she had made it up, Stelter would have said that's completely fake. So it's clear that they exist. But that Zucker said that Zucker gave Trump advice before his debate. And we saw this was also leaked in the DNC emails that leaked out through WikiLeaks, that the Clinton campaign was given debate questions ahead of time as well, not from Zucker, but from Donna Brazile at CNN, I believe, or was she with the MSNBC then? But either way, I think it was CNN. So you have various people leaking debate prep to these people before the debates, which, obviously is unethical to say the least. But Stelter's response is that private conversations it really sucks that some of them go public. And it's like, yeah, dude, fine. But this showed immense corruption. This is something you should want. You should want the fucking ruling elite, which we're talking about the head of CNN. That is part of the ruling elite. That is the ruling elite of the media. You should want to know when they're being corrupt, how they're being corrupt. He's reliable sources. His job is to out media corruption, supposedly. I mean, of course, it's not really. His real job is to defend the neoliberal order while going after only Fox News. But this idea, it's ruined our friendship. Furthermore, earlier he was defending anonymous sources, and then with this thing he's saying, well, it's taken out of context. What is anonymous sourcing but taking things out of context, like not knowing who it is who said this and what the proof is that they actually are pointing to? Anonymous sourcing from the intelligence community never comes with proof. It is literally just people in the intelligence community saying, oh, yeah, Taliban took bribes from Russia to shoot people. Yep. Uh-huh. And then the reporter goes, well, can you send me any proof? No, it's classified documents. National security. Nope. So what is that but bullshit out of context? So you were defending that a minute ago, and now you're upset that something is out of context. Anyway, this guy's such a fucking sad shell of a human that he defends this shit. And I mean, and here's the thing. He says, I'm not the spokesman for CNN. I shouldn't have to defend all of CNN. And I actually agree with that. If you have a show on a network, you shouldn't have to defend them because you're not in charge of the network. I mean, fucking people are on networks with awful shit that, John Oliver's on HBO that airs a thing on how to have sex, how to best, have 3 dicks in you at once or whatever. I mean, they have all kinds of crazy shit on HBO. So it's like, he shouldn't have to defend the network. And I agree with that. You should defend your own show, except for the fact that in this case, you're talking about Brian Stelter, whose show is called whatever, On the Media. Is that what it's called? His show is about analyzing the media. So there is a difference when you are like, I am here to analyze and tell you what is legitimate in the media. And then you say, I'm not going to speak about what CNN does. You can't have it both ways. You get one or the other. You get one or the other, asshole.
I think that's really sad. And I hope we can start to rebuild. I hope we can start to rebuild those friendships rather than, all feel like we're at war with each other.
Brian, you write about the struggle between the journalism side of Fox News and the opinion side. Something that has always bothered me across all cable news is the blurred line between what's news and what's opinion. Like, we are an opinion panel here at The View. Do you think that lack of clarity or that confusion contributes to the misinformation and extreme divisiveness we're seeing in politics today?
I do. And I talk about it with my staff at Reliable Sources. And I always want to make sure that I'm not part of that problem. But I do think CNN, there are some hours of CNN that have a lot more point of view these days. Some of the anchors, including, yours truly, I'll start with a monologue, talking through the president's lies and trying to debunk them. I know there's more point of view these days, although we will never top The View, I think. I think the reason why we're doing it, though, I think the reason why we have these monologues is because it's the best way to cut through all the noise and get to the news. To say, for example, the media is not the enemy of the American people or the enemy of Republicans. The media is the enemy of liars. And we can debunk lies through these essays. But it is an issue.
The media is the enemy of liars. Are you fucking out of your goddamn mind? The mainstream media is 100%, 100% just nowadays. It's owned and operated by corporate America. It is the defender and the front line of information for and by corporate America, by the empire. Its job, the mainstream media's job, and how you get paid and why you're there is to defend the American empire, is to make sure that all of the war crimes that we commit around the world, that all of the endless horseshit and bullshit that we spit out is believed by the American people, is supported. Your job is to manufacture consent for these horrific wars that go on and on and on and on. There are people fighting in Afghanistan right now who weren't born when the war in Afghanistan began. And it is your job at CNN to make people think that makes even an inch of sense. That is what you do. You are a professional liar in every regard, Brian Stelter. And then he has the nerve to be like, media is the opposition to liars. Yes, my friend, absolutely. God. You think with the amount of bullshit in your noggin, it would explode. And it looks like it's getting closer. I mean, those shirt collars are getting very tight, my friend. Holy fuck. I mean, the other thing that CNN and all these networks do, which of course Brian Stelter doesn't want to talk about because it would completely blow up his whole situation. By the way, I call this show On Reality. It's called I called it on media. It's called Reality Bites or Reliable Sources, or what it's called, Reliable Sources. But the other thing CNN and all these networks do is they just talk about sometimes stories that are mildly important, but often they'll talk about a lot of nonsense. And the goal is to fill the media, fill the news hours with a lot of things that are borderline meaningless in the actual lives of average Americans on a day-to-day basis, and ignore stuff, for the most part, like climate change, which should be talked about every single day, like environmental collapse. Even if you're a fucking nutbag who doesn't believe in climate change, environmental destruction, even without climate change. We've killed 50% of the Earth's wildlife over the past 40 years. Like hundreds of species go extinct. I think it's a day, maybe it's a week, but I think it's a day. It's the amount of environmental destruction that's never mentioned, the biodiversity loss. How about other corporate, desecrations like Monsanto's herbicide that's giving everyone cancer and killing off all the bees? How about the Dow Chemical intentional spills in Michigan in the water there? How about the Chevron's massive oil spill in the Amazonian rainforest, causing a near genocide of the indigenous? How about, you can go around just down the list of everything CNN would not and does not talk about. How about the weapons contractors that are really in control of our endless wars and make sure that they continue? And they brag on their investor phone calls about how there's going to be a real growth market this year in Iran or around Iran, because we're going to push for closer to war with Iran, which will make the countries around Iran want to buy our weapons. They say those kind of things on investor phone calls that they don't say in the public. Or CNN talking about big pharma and the amount that they fucking, exploit us and sicken us. And I guess the real word is sicken us, not sicken us. You can cut the end and just make it sicken us. But the amount they profit off of drugs that are either useless or could easily be replaced by a generic. All of that is the job of CNN, to ignore all of that stuff, to not talk about it, to not get to the heart of our unfettered capitalist system that is destroying people's lives, destroying the environment. Capitalism, at the end of the day, is the idea of infinite growth on a finite planet. And I believe it was George Carlin says we're swirling around the toilet bowl and it gets quicker and quicker as you get towards the center. And you're seeing it more and more. And so The job of that man right there, Brian Stelter and The View and all of these networks, is to make you think the allowable debate is right here in a tiny little box between Joe Biden and Donald Trump, two corporate hacks who support war crimes. I mean, this week, while everything else is going on, yes, Teddy says Donziger. Yes, I was talking when I said Chevron in Ecuador, I was talking about Steven Donziger, who he won the lawsuit against Chevron, and they owe billions of dollars. But rather than pay it, they've just got him imprisoned in on house arrest in New York because our corporations own our courts, and they're able to achieve that kind of thing. But yeah, I was talking about Biden and how they, both sides are pushing these endless wars and endless economic sanctions. Biden took the time, despite everything else that's going on right now, Biden took the time to tweet about standing up for human rights in Venezuela, Nicaragua, and Cuba. Now, does anyone know, out of all the shit that's going on in the world, why he picked Venezuela, Nicaragua, and Cuba? Why those three? Are those the only countries with human rights abuses? Do you think in Brazil, where they have a fascist president named Bolsonaro, that there's not human rights abuses? Do you think in Saudi Arabia, where they have a monarchy that beheads people for being gay? Do you think there's human rights abuses there? Do you think there's human rights abuses in many countries that the U.S. supports and is allied with? So why did Biden pick those three? Venezuela, I believe those are the three. I believe there's only three. He may have had one more in there, but why did Biden pick Venezuela, Cuba, and Nicaragua? Well, those are three socialist countries that have elected leftist leaders, and they've, in Venezuela, they cut extreme poverty by 70% after Chavez was elected. In Cuba, there is guaranteed housing and guaranteed education. This is not saying that everything's perfect in these societies. It's not. And a lot of the people dying due to economic starvation in Venezuela right now, it's because of our sanctions. So, things are not good in Venezuela, largely thanks to us. But anyway, I love that Biden had the time. Considering everything that's going on, you got a pandemic, you got 100 million people facing evictions and foreclosures in this country. You got people struggling and starving. You got California's on fire. There's 5 hurricanes in the Atlantic, and Biden took the time to say, let's get involved more in Venezuela, Cuba, and Nicaragua. Let's make sure to create coups in those countries so that we can collapse their countries and take their resources. That is really what that tweet says. And Biden had the time to do it because that's what he does. He's just a good guy. Just a good guy with a lot of time on his hands. All right, guys, I'm going to wrap this up. Hope you enjoyed this one with the picture-in-picture. And please share this. I do these almost every single day, every single weekday, except sometimes. So go to leecamp.com to see the new one each day because you are not going to be shown these. They're probably not going to be recommended to you often. They're not, the various levels of suppression are many, but so you got to make a choice. Go to leecamp.com every day and please join the free email list. All right. Thanks a lot. Keep fighting.